Welcome. Just me again. We did this a couple of weeks ago. I'm still traveling overseas. It is difficult to match up times with Jules and Dan on some weeks, but we've committed to getting some sort of content out while I am traveling, regardless of what sort of performance that was. I'm in the Dolomites in Italy. This is our first day here. Actually had a really good day. After about 8:30 a.m. my time, which is when I finished watching the game. Anyway, let's do this properly. We'll do this properly. We'll hit the, as we always do, we'll hit the intro, and then we'll get stuck in.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It was clean. It was clinical. Like, we executed to perfection.
Now, I'd like to actually go into a few stats because, and I questioned Charlie about a month or so ago.
That is so frustrating as a fan. All you needed was an extra 2-3%.
On the podcast, you're a shit person. You're arrogant. You're obnoxious. I'm sick of it. And I reckon I've got 2 more episodes in me.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 159 of the Almost Blues Brothers podcast, part of the Blue Abroad Media Network, proudly powered in 2025 by Mavros Studios, even though we're not there for another 3 weeks. We'll be back in the studio in 3 weeks' time. We're also proudly sponsored and partnered with this year with Vortep. Head to vortep.com.au. Almost Blues Brothers, one word, at the checkout for 10% off your Vortep gear. Special shout out to 3099 Jerky as well. Head to 3099jerky.com to get some delicious beef jerky that we've been eating on the podcast all year. And St. David Dairy, you can head to their concept store down in Fitzroy North. Check out their array of dairy products, including ice cream and milk on tap, mind you, as well as their award-winning coffee. Yes, as I said off the top, it's just me this week. I'm not live. This is pre-recorded, but feel free to get involved in the live chat. Just couldn't match up with Jules and Dan this week. They did both watch the game. Dan had a lot he wanted to say, but unfortunately, like I said, just didn't work out in terms of timing this week. So you've got me. Again, I don't know if this will go for an hour or an hour and a half as we usually do. It's going to be hard enough to talk about, to be honest, just on my own. So we'll go for as long as we can. But before we get into it, I will share a little bit of what's been going on with me. Yes, we're in the Dolomites, as I said off the top. Day one, did a nice 3-4 hour hike today. What was it called? Saseda Ridge Trail from the Coal Razor chairlift. About a 12K hike loop, which was fantastic. It's the 5th hike of this trip, which has been really, really good. I haven't done a lot of hiking, actually, in my life up until this point, but my partner, Gab, has become a bit of a fanatic since she's been living overseas. So we're getting into that. Yeah, it's been good. I actually forgot last week, before we get stuck into the game, I forgot to give a shout-out to a couple of people. I was in the first one I'll give a shout out to. I don't think he listens to the show, but it's been a bit of a weird trip. We're in Albania, in one of the remotest parts of Albania, up near Valbona, before we did a hike from Valbona to Theth. And you got to take a boat out to Valbona from where you stay in Skoda, which is a main town there up in the north of Albania. And as I'm approaching this boat, I see someone stand in front of me, and it's actually someone I work with, and his name's Rory. So I want to give you a shout out to Rory. We didn't plan this at all. He appeared in front of me before we hopped on this boat. Neither of us knew that we're in Albania, let alone going to do the exact same hike and staying at the exact same accommodation at the exact same time. So I ended up spending a nice 3 days with Rory. And then as we come back to Skoda after finishing that hike, I run into an old high school friend of mine, Felix, who we've actually mentioned on this show before. Felix took myself, Dan, and Jules to the MCC in 2023 when we beat Collingwood in round 20. And Felix was in Skoda that night. They just got to Skoda that night as we got back. We had a nice little catch-up. Now, I know Felix does listen to the show, so I'd like to give a shout-out to Felix and say g'day. But it's just been a bit of a weird trip. We've run into people that you just wouldn't expect to run into. But it's been nice. It's been a nice break from Melbourne. Nice break from the footy in particular. And with that, I guess with that said, without any further ado, do you want
Let's get into it.
to... I don't know if that actually came across on audio, but that's Gabrielle getting involved. I think for the first time in the podcast ever. Is that right? First time? Yeah, no, she's done now. Anyway, final scores from the MCG. Oh, boy. 10-13-73, Carlton defeated by North Melbourne 13-6-84. Goals for the Blues, 6 goal kickers this week. Akers, Fogarty, Motlop, Williams with 1 each, Fantasia with 2, and McGovern with 4. No injuries for the Blues. 56,000 at the G, which is a decent crowd, really, considering we played a side that has struggled for a few years now to bring in crowds themselves. I don't even know where to start with this one, to be honest. Actually, I know where to start. Last week on the show, me and Jules previewed this game after we spoke about the really dour effort, even though it was a win against the Eagles. We previewed this game, and I said off the top, I spoke about form lines coming into this. And I looked at North Melbourne's form line prior to this, and they had a handful of games against some pretty good opposition, the likes of Brisbane, Freo over in the West, and a few others, where they'd fallen just short after putting together some pretty convincing performances. And they'd fallen just short, and I did say that they'd be hungry. They'd probably smell a little bit of blood in the water when they came up against Carlton Football Club. And I think, I'm not sure, you can fact check me on this, but I think for the first time this year, I believe I predicted a loss for our club. And I'm not surprised. I don't think anyone should be surprised at this point, because the trajectory that we've been on as a club for a little while now versus the trajectory that the North Melbourne Football Club have been on quite recently, the polar opposites. Polar opposites. You've got one club that should be, based on the makeup of particularly the top end of their list, should be contending in finals. I'm not going to say flags, but contending in finals consistently. You got another team that's quite young, inexperienced, with an experienced coach, in Alistair Clarkson, that have struggled for a few years, but have been on the up, and they're starting to put it together. And they put it together today. There's been a lot of there've been a lot of performances by our football club over the years where I think we've all sat back and just gone, fuck, that's bad. But the difference now, and we've spoken about this a little bit, the difference now versus 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when we're on the journey, if anyone remembers that, is that there was no expectation back then. We're actually expected to put in some pretty poor performances from time to time. The expectation coming into this year has been that that's well and truly in the past, that as a group, that this list has matured to a point where they don't let standards slip week to week, and there is at least a level of consistency that as fans we would expect to get week in, week out. just consistent, even just speaking of consistency, let alone cultural identity, let alone care factor. But this performance in particular, this is one that's going to stay in the mind, I think, for a little while, for a lot of us, because even though I predicted this last week that this had a loss written all over it, not in my wildest dreams would I have thought that our football club would be close to 50 points down. 50 points. 8 goals just after halftime. Kicked one behind in the second quarter. And funnily enough, we actually kept them scoreless in the last and still somehow lost the game. Oh, man. As I was watching the game unfold, it was I was sort of thinking back to the West Coast and Essendon games where we set the win up quite early. And we got ourselves out to a 40-odd point lead in both games, dropped our end in the second half, but still did enough early to set up the win. And I reiterated a couple of times, usually when a team does that in a game early on, usually, more often than not, they'll go on and win it, regardless of how bad it gets for them in the second half. That's what North did. That's exactly what North Melbourne did today. They set up the win in the second quarter. So I think the way that we actually started the game was quite positive. I think if you go back and watch the first 10 minutes, and again, you can't play 10 minutes of footy and, be completely positive. But if you do go back and watch the first 10 minutes, the way that we moved the ball and the intent that we had to get the ball forward quickly, efficiently, by hand in particular, was actually, I don't want to say impressive because that can probably be taken in the wrong way within the context of what this performance became in the end. But the first 10 minutes were very positive. And what really stood out to me, outside of how clean we looked in moving the football, either out from stoppage or in transition off turnover or whatever it was in that first 10 or 15 minutes, the one thing that stood out to me, that concerned me, was that we went into quarter time 2-7 or 2-6, I think. I believe it was 2-6. Let me check that. 2-6. And we ended up 2-7. And they flashed up a stat around set shots in, I think, maybe midway through the second quarter, and we'd kicked 0-5 from set shots. 2-7 at that point, and I believe we'd held North to 21 points or whatever it was. Just prior to that 10-minute patch that they had where they just put the Jets on and it was game over. But this has been I spoke about consistency before and expecting a level of consistent standard that as a fan, you expect from your football club at this point in their evolution. The only thing that's been consistent about this football club week to week is that we somehow find a way to cock it up in some facet of the game every other week. Second halves have been probably the biggest plight on our season. And the answer for why we fade out like we do still can't be found. But if you go back across a lot of weeks of watching this football club go about their business the way they do, we just find new ways and invent new ways to make it really, really hard for ourselves to put a stamp on a game of football. And so if I go back to talking about that first 10 or 15-minute patch where we had them on the ropes, as we should have, as our football club should have a football club like North Melbourne on the ropes, if we are who we say we are, get to that later. 2-7 should ring alarm bells, and it did. And I said to myself, all North need is 10 minutes of accurate kicking. All North need is 10 minutes of dominance around the football, and they can put us away. And lo and behold, 10 minutes goes past, Another 5 minutes into the third. I think we were 46 points down. Shut the gates. Now, I'm glad I wasn't at the game, to be honest, because I probably would have left at halftime, if I'm being honest. I'm going to be honest with myself. In the past, I've been a bit of a stickler for, you got to stay till the end. If you leave, what sort of message does that send? But why do we kid ourselves, honestly? I've been fortunate enough to travel to the UK a few times in the last couple of years and attend some EPL games, some Arsenal games, but also some games of opposition clubs as well. I can tell you now, the fans of EPL clubs, they don't give a shit. I watched Tottenham Hotspur fans walk out of a North London derby that I attended at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in September last year when they were 1-0 down to Arsenal with 10 minutes to go. 1-0. And they decided that they'd seen enough for the day because the standard of football that Tottenham put on that day was atrocious, regardless of the scoreline. But for some reason, as fans of this football club, we've got this, this pride of, we always stick around, we stay to the end. We've done that forget about 30 years, but we've done that for 10 years now through 3 or 4 phases, 3 or 4 different head coaches with largely the same core group on this list. Core group. And you know the players I'm talking about when I say core group. What's the point anymore? I was glad to see the stadium empty out when it did in the fourth. Because that's what a performance like that deserves, unfortunately. If you're privileged enough to get paid to play this game and to play for a club that most of us as fans would have dreamt of as kids to one day play for, and you decide week in, week out that, I don't even know if it's a decision, really. Incompetence, lack of desire, whatever it may be, wherever that stems from, if you're not prepared to face facts and really look inward as a football club and as a list after some of the worst football we've seen for a long time this year, across the course of this year, mind you, then you don't deserve, they barely deserve 56,000 turning up in the first place, really. But the fact that 56,000 rocked up to the MCG, the type of football that this club has been playing for the majority of this year is astounding. That's astounding. So anyway, North Melbourne set up the win in the second quarter. Game was done at halftime. Sure, if we were a good football club, you could probably claw it back. Collingwood did it last year against North, if anyone remembers that, when they were on the ropes. They had about 8 VFL players out there, and they were down by about the same scoreline in the third. Clawed it back to win by a point. If you're a good football club, that's what you do. Unfortunately, we're not. And I think the reality of this situation should have hit all of us today right between the eyes. No sugarcoating it anymore. We are a pitiful football club. Not just at the moment, but for the better part of the last year. Well, actually, the year to the day, apparently, since we beat Geelong at the G in that Carlton Respects game when we all thought, we're going to win the flag. 1 year. Pitiful. We've lost to the likes of Richmond, St Kilda, and North in that time. Lost. Let alone those teams being pretty much the only teams that we could beat outside of a Geelong win and an Essendon win. So they had an opportunity to square the ledger today. They didn't. They had an opportunity to gain some momentum going into what would have been a critical clash against Port Adelaide next week. They didn't. And now, unfortunately, the Jungle Drums start beating for Michael Voss, whether you agree with it or not. The Jungle Drums will start beating for certain players on this list, whether you agree with it or not. But unfortunately, the reality of the situation is that's just where we're at as a football club. That's it. We had an opportunity I believe, with this list to really give it a good crack for a number of years. And I just can't see how I honestly just can't see how we claw ourselves out of this without some drastic change. And I don't know if that drastic change means some mid to long-term pain. I don't know if this is a transitional year. Graham Wright comes in and, forces, some big changes quickly. Maybe it turns the club around. Who knows? We don't know what that's going to look like past this year. But today's performance was just tip of the iceberg for what I think a lot of us have seen coming for a little while now this year. It's been a tough watch most weeks, and it's been an uncertain watch going into most weeks. Which you just at this point in our evolution, you just wouldn't think that we'd still be talking about this, honestly. And I don't know what the answer is. I'd love to hear people's thoughts in the comments. I really would. And I know what the rhetoric is for the majority. It's Voss, sack him Monday. It just can't be the only reason. Again, I refuse to believe it. I refuse to believe that we're so incompetent as a club that we've gotten 3 consecutive head coaches wrong within the span of 8 years. Because if that is the level of incompetence that we hold as a football club in our decision-making and appointing what is largely regarded as one of the most important, if not the most important people at the football club, if that is how incompetent we have been across 8 years, then surely even those that are saying Voss is the problem, surely you can also admit that it runs far deeper than that to get to this point, far deeper. So if he's gone, he's gone. I'm not a supporter of it. I think he should see his contract out. I think he's earned it, considering he's the only coach in 25 years that took us to a prelim and the only coach in 15 years that has taken us to back-to-back final series, whether you like it or not. That's fact. So I think he's deserved to at least see out his contract. But surely we can all admit that we're out of answers for this now. None of us. You can sit there and hypothesize. It's the board. It's this. It's that. You've got to cut the list and you've got to move certain players on and you've got to overhaul the coaching department. And I believe in a few of those things myself, but surely we can all admit that none of us have got any clue as to how you fix this at this point. None of us. It's just insane. It's honestly insane. This was a game, and I know it may sound dramatic. The way that I'm talking about the implosion essentially of this football club as a whole. But this game, it just rubber stamps everything. You just can't, if you don't have the standards as a club to rock up to a game like this, having battled for most of the year with the opportunity to square the ledger against a pretty pitiful club themselves in North Melbourne. If you don't have the standards to be able to execute that, and not only the standards to not execute, but the way that you lost, I've got no answers anymore. 13-6 to 5-8 at 3/4 time. 8-goal buffer to the North Melbourne Football Club at 3/4 time today. Colby McKercher. Geez, he's a good player. He's a really good player, that kid. He's going to be... There was an interview with Nick Larkey during the week that I saw very briefly. They asked him about the game where they won in Launceston. It basically gifted the Eagles Harley Reid, and he said, "No, I'm more than comfortable winning that game, and really happy that Cobb is part of our team. I'd be happy if we had Cobb McKercher in our team." He tore us to shreds today. Paul Curtis gave us nightmares again. Harry Sheasel, good football player for his age. Very good football player for his age. Like, I don't know. Like, you look at our best on the AFL app here, right? Wiedering, Hewitt, McGovern, Haynes, Fogarty. I'll probably give the best to Wiedering because he battled through an ankle injury to see out the game. He probably won't play next week. Hewitt, he's been consistent all year. McGovern kicks 4. Haynes has been consistent all year down back, intercepting everything. And Fogarty did have a decent game. But if Fogarty's top 5 on the day with the game that he had today, not that it was bad, but mate, how bad are the rest of them? You're just passengers. I also said last week, and it's not to bash Tom at all, but I said that this was a game for Tom DeConning to really rip to shreds and put a rubber stamp on his contract to say, "I've just destroyed the best ruck in the comp in Tristan Jerry. Pay me what I'm worth." And mate, almost non-existent at times. Charlie Curnow, mate, honestly, the thing that really pissed me off today, and it hasn't, this sort of thing hasn't pissed me off in the past, but it pissed me off today. You're almost 50 points down, man. You're almost 50 points down at the start of the last quarter. And I think McGovern or someone kicked a goal. I can't remember. I know Zach Williams kicked one, and it was the same sort of thing in the third, but like the celebration and the carry on when you're 50 points down, like, and the laughing and the like, what are we do? What are we doing here? There was one player that I noticed that wasn't laughing, and it's a player that in the past I've questioned in terms of his development, but I've been very impressed with Ollie Hollands this year, and I'm more than happy to eat my words on what I've said about him in the past. He's going to be a great leader of this football club, actually. Leader for many years. And he was one that wasn't laughing. Go back and watch the footage after a few of those goals that came late. And you can see the look on Ollie's face. He's not happy. He's not impressed. And that's what you'd expect from your playing group when you're 50 points down. When you kick a goal to get it back to 42 or whatever it was, 40. Like, Charlie Curnow, goalless. Toby Pink gave you a bath, mate. Toby Pink. And Charlie Condon, fair enough. I'll give him some credit, but you're supposed to be a superstar and you're goalless against North and you're laughing and you're a vice captain of this football club. You're in a leadership group. It's just not what you expect at this point from your leaders. It really isn't. I really don't want to talk positives, to be honest. I will give a shout out to Ollie Hollands. I think his development this year has been really good to see coming out of the back half. It took him a little bit of time to get going, but his run and dash out of the back half in getting the ball moving for us and his intent and desire to take the game on at all costs. It's more of what we need across the rest of the 22 that rock up on game day. So I'm happy with how Ollie's tracking. I think he's, like I said before, I think he will actually be a leader of this football club at some point. Whether he's a captain or not, I can see him being definitely part of some sort of leadership group or in some sort of formal leadership capacity. Another positive is Sam Doherty getting thrown behind the ball. Spoke about this last week. It's where he won his All-Australian jacket. Leave him there. He took 16 marks today. Yes, he still makes mistakes. Every player does on game day, but he looks much more comfortable back there. And I think we can still get a little bit out of Doc in that role, especially with a bit of experience to try and foster the development of an Ollie Hollands that's coming through, for instance. McGovern, 4 goals. Yep, sure. Another cameo from him. I think he 3 last week, 3 goals, 3, and had 3 goal assists or something. Early on, he just baffled me with some of his decision making. Like, I get it. You want to square the ball up, you want to share the ball around, but mate, just you're 20 meters out on a slight angle. Go kick the goal. Like, it's not that hard. But he had a good game. You can't knock 4 goals. Fantasia, actually, Razio has been good on since his return in that role. That he plays sort of up at stoppage and then gets the ball going forward and gives us something, at least in the forward half when the ball's in his hands. Something. But outside of that, that's it. Really. There's not a single other player looking at the stat sheet or from the memory bank from watching that game today that you can tip your cap to. And that is woeful. That is absolutely woeful. So what does this mean now, right? So we're 6 and 8. We didn't square up the ledger as we should have. We didn't find any momentum, and we're not going to find momentum. More than happy to sit here today, and I hope they prove me wrong, but they're not gonna. To say that's season done, you'd expect that's curtains. There's no finals this year. I think you have to be madder than me, and even my maddest moments to predict that we can still play finals from here. We've bottled the easiest fixture that the AFL has given any team this year whatsoever. Completely bottled it. With losses to Richmond and North. My God. 6 and 8. So you'd have to be mad to predict finals at this point. And I'm more than happy to say, put a line through us. We're done. There's no finals this year. What does that mean? What does that mean? This is the first time that we've faced this as a club and as fans of this club, having the expectation that we're better than what we actually are. Because what we actually are is rubbish. Plain and simple. Just not good. Not a good football team. So what does this now mean in terms of first coming to reality with that? Secondly, not being in a rebuild like we have been in the past where the season's been done and dusted at round 14, but we know that was probably going to be the case. We're already looking towards the future. What does that look like? Who are we going to develop? What does this now mean for the next 9 games that are left in the season for this football club? And I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know what I'm looking for now. I don't know what I'm looking for from this club. The easiest thing to say is play the kids. That's the first thing everyone goes to. Just play the kids. Put your stars on ice. Nick Newman doesn't have to come back now. I don't care what the reports say. Not from a ruptured patella tendon. What for? So keep him on ice. You get a preseason into him, preseason into Jagger Smith. Does Walsh need to come back into the fold now? Probably not. What for? You know, what do you do with the likes of Wiedering, who's done his ankle today? Do you force him to play against Port next week? What for? They can say what they want. They can say they're still, I don't know what the rhetoric's going to be this year. Stay united, stay stronger together, blah, 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 blah. We'll get to work. They're not the standards that we expect of ourselves. Clearly it is at this point. But this will be the rhetoric this week. We'll want to bounce back against Port. You know, we're just taking it 1 week at a time now. It's just bullshit. It's rubbish. So do you force Wiedering to play next week against Port? Does an ankle again, then needs surgery, interrupted end of season, interrupted off season, has to come back through rehab. We've seen all that before. Starts Charlie last year, you know. Do you bring Harry back? That's a 4 to 6 week surgery. So that means he comes back round 20 when we're likely already out of finals contention unless something really changes from here. So, yeah, maybe you do just play the kids. Maybe you look at this. If you're Michael Voss, which, again, I mean, is he even fighting for his job now? Like, what would he be thinking after that and where we're at? I don't know. I just don't know what the rest of this year looks like. I wish I had answers. I wish I knew what I wanted to see for the rest of the year, but I don't. It's just really disappointing. It's really disappointing that the opposition banter around us being Heartbreak FC and mentally weak and our football club will never give the fans what they deserve. Like, it's so disappointing that that's not just banter. Like, it's true. It's actually true. Excuse my cough. I don't know. I've come down with a bit of a stuffy nose or something since I got back from dinner tonight. But anyway, I don't know what it looks like. We can look forward. Graham Wright taking over from Brian Cook. By all reports, he's already moved into his office. So he's basically, even though he's the interim or he's doing some sort of shadowing role or whatever it is, he's moving his chess pieces already. So I think what we can expect and what we all expect now, that once that off-season hits, there are going to be some drastic changes very quickly made by Graham Wright, is what I would hope, knowing his track record when he comes into football clubs as an administrator, wanting to enforce some pretty drastic change. I think a few of us are going to be in for a bit of a shock in terms of what that actually means. So the only thing I would say, if you're listening to this, is don't get too attached to the players at this point. Number one. Don't get too attached to players, because what Graham Wright has done in the past at the likes of Collingwood, and particularly Collingwood with the Treloar and the Grundy trades back when, which shocked everyone. I think we're in for even more of a shock with what might be in store with the way that a few chess pieces move. I would hope, I mean, I know I'm going to get some backlash for this. Did Vossi lose this game today? Yes, I think he did. I don't think he did enough as a head coach to get that back on our terms. Even I can admit that. But again, is he the biggest problem? I don't know. I look at the 3/4 time spray that's all over social media that he gave this group. We haven't seen that from him, and I'll tell you the last time I saw it. We haven't seen that from him since the King's birthday clash against Essendon in 2022. I believe it was something like 10-3 at that point, or 10-4. And he sprayed him at 3/4 time. We're up by like 20-odd points, 30 points going into the last quarter, and he sprayed him at 3/4 time. It was sort of a shock to a few of us, because like, fuck, we're on top of him, and he's not happy with the standards. And I don't know if anyone remembers what happened after that. We won 4 games for the rest of the year and missed finals. So I haven't seen a spray like he gave today at 3/4 time since then. based on that track record there, although a small sample size, based on Jacob Wiedering's comments from earlier this year about how the group is mentally fragile, like admitting that as a football club, my God, just admitting that. You bundle all of that together. If I'm going to do a quick preview of Port next week, you'd have to be crazy to think that we're any chance of a response. I'd be more confident sitting here right now saying that we're going to lose by about 80 next week. than expecting any sort of response whatsoever. So that's next week's expectation. Ins and outs, who cares at this point? I don't even know what the injury list is going to look like. We've got no one to call up. Apparently, Ashton Moore had a half decent game in the VFL, but I don't know. Do you give Harry Lemmy his debut? Do you call him up? Do you say, mate, go for it? As a spearhead, maybe he's earned it at this point. 4 years on the list, whatever it is. I don't know. I just don't know what this looks like next week, let alone for the next 9 weeks. But with all that said, it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. I'm intrigued, very, very intrigued to see if this playing group actually does care, as they say they do, for their head coach. That's clearly on the ropes now after today. Because if you do, you may not make finals, but you're definitely not going to put in one of those performances again. But with that said, I can see a few more of those performances from now to the end of the year. So anyway, there was a tough watch. I feel for most people that went to that game. It was my sister's birthday, actually, and she went to that game to celebrate her 29th birthday. So happy birthday to my sister Lauren. Yeah. Just a waste of a season again. Absolute waste. And we can only hope it's a transitional year and that this doesn't spell a few more years now of what we've seen in the past. I think we all understand what I'm talking about when I say that. Because God, if we are going back to those days in any capacity, it's going to be really hard for a lot of us to get behind this club. That's just a reality now. Get sold hope for 10 years and then nothing comes of it outside of a very, very short window where it was lightning in a bottle. Yeah, I just don't know what they really expect from us anymore, let alone themselves. So that's that. A bit depressing this week. Apologies, you only got me. I have to check what day we play next week. I'll check that now. Thursday, perfect. Thursday night against Port. So there should be plenty of time for me, Dan, and Jules to actually get together next week and have a proper chat. I'm not expecting us to win. I am expecting it to look like a 10-goal loss, more so than a close game. More than happy to say that, unbiased. So, yeah, prove me wrong. They won't. So, thank you for joining me tonight. Probably babbled a little bit here and there. It's difficult doing this on your own sometimes, but hopefully I got across enough of the messaging that has been rattling around through my head for a little bit of today while I've been trying to think of how we're going to put this together. So hopefully you enjoyed it. If you haven't and you're still here, I don't know why you're watching, but thank you very much. Thanks again to all our sponsors. Thanks again to Blue Abroad. Thanks again to Mavrosh Studios. We will see you next week. And until then, begrudgingly, go Blues.